You care too much, Claire. That's why people like me can get away with anything. Sierra had said that once, half laughing, half bragging. At the time, Claire brushed it off as another one of Sierra's dramatic, offhand remarks. But later, she would replay those words and realize they weren't a joke. They were a warning. And Claire missed it. Claire Mitchell had always been the stable one in her chaotic family. She built a respectable career in finance, kept a quiet apartment in Queens, and lived her life with a soft kind of responsibility that people often misinterpreted as weakness. She remembered birthdays, stayed late to help coworkers, paid for dinners, and apologized even when she wasn't wrong. It wasn't that she was naive. She simply cared, deeply, consistently, exhaustingly. And then there was Sierra. Where Claire moved gently, Sierra exploded. Where Claire planned, Sierra improvised. Sierra lived like a firecracker, bright and loud and dangerous, fueled by impulse rather than intention. She was a single mother who called herself a cool mom, though most people would describe her more accurately as a woman who let her son, Eli, raise himself while she chased excitement. She wasn't cruel, not intentionally, but she was careless in a way that made her cruel by accident. It began with babysitting once a week, then twice, then every time Sierra needed a break, which was always, "Claire, can you watch Eli? I just need to run a quick errand," became the anthem of Sierra's life. The errands stretched from 20 minutes to entire evenings. Then Claire found herself picking Eli up from school just this one time, which turned into every Thursday, which turned into, honestly, it would help me so much if you could make it a regular thing. And Claire did, because Eli was 4 years old and innocent and sweet. Because he deserved stability even if Sierra couldn't provide it. Because Claire loved him like he was hers. And Sierra knew it. When preschool tuition bounced, Claire paid it. When Eli needed clothes, Claire ordered them. When field trips, dentist bills, or unexpected expenses came up, Claire covered them without being asked twice, and sometimes without being asked at all. Financially, emotionally, logistically, Sierra had discovered the perfect system. Why handle responsibilities when Claire would do it better? Claire wasn't a sister. She was an unspoken safety net, one Sierra relied on shamelessly. The imbalance became a quiet normalcy in their lives, until Claire announced her honeymoon. It had been 2 years in the making. She and her husband, Caleb, never took a honeymoon after the wedding, and now they had saved enough for a week-long trip to the Caribbean. Crystal beaches, good food, a rare breath of happiness. Claire told Sierra 4 months in advance. She delivered the news gently, anticipating the usual theatrics, sighs, accusations, guilt-tripping, or a monologue about how single mothers never get breaks. But Sierra did something unexpected. She smiled. Calm, polite, almost supportive. "Oh, don't worry," she reassured, flicking her hand like nothing mattered. "I'll figure it out. Enjoy your trip. Seriously, you deserve it." Claire blinked. That wasn't normal. That wasn't Sierra. People don't shed their patterns overnight, especially people like Sierra. But Claire wanted to believe the best. For once, she allowed herself to relax. She packed her bags early, printed her itinerary, and shared slow, excited conversations with Caleb about beaches and cocktails and sunrises they would finally see together. The night before their flight, they went to bed smiling. At 3:04 a.m., the world cracked open. Claire woke to her phone vibrating violently on the nightstand. Sierra's name lit up the screen. She answered immediately. What came through the phone wasn't speech at first, just choking sobs, shaking breaths, and the unmistakable sound of panic. "Claire," Sierra screamed. "Oh my God, you have to come home. You have to come home right now." Claire's heart slammed against her ribs. "What happened? Sierra, what's going on?" Sierra broke into another sob. "It's Eli. There was an accident. A drunk driver. He was hit. Oh God, he's being rushed to the hospital. They said it's brain trauma. They're doing emergency surgery. Claire, please. I can't do this alone." The words were disjointed, hysterical, breathless. Too much information delivered too fast for Claire to question any of it. She threw her suitcase open, shoving clothes back inside with shaking hands. Caleb sat up, horrified, demanding updates she barely had. They canceled flights. They forfeited reservations. They paid penalties and fees without blinking. $8,000 evaporated in minutes. Because none of it mattered compared to Eli. During the taxi ride from JFK, Claire called every hospital Sierra claimed to be at. No one answered. No one had an Eli Brooks listed under incoming trauma. Her panic deepened into dread. Try another hospital, she insisted to Caleb, voice tight with rising hysteria. Try all of them. He did. One by one, every hospital said the same thing. No pediatric patient named Eli. No emergency brain surgery. No accident matching that description. After the fourth denial, Claire's shaking stopped, not because she calmed down, but because something colder replaced the panic. How can he not be there? She whispered. Her voice sounded foreign, hollow. Caleb met her eyes with a look she didn't want to interpret. Claire, what if Sierra lied? The idea felt monstrous. Impossible. Unthinkable. But the truth was simple. Sierra had lied before. Sierra had manipulated before. Sierra had used emergencies for attention before. Just never like this. By the time they reached Sierra's house, Claire felt like she was walking into a nightmare she didn't have words for. She braced herself for blood, bandages, doctors, something horrible. But when they opened the door, what they found wasn't tragedy. It was betrayal. And it would hurt far worse than any injury Sierra could have faked. What Claire found in Sierra's house wasn't a medical emergency, or a bleeding child, or even a trace of panic. It was something colder, something that confirmed the truth she didn't want to believe. And that truth set the stage for the humiliation that would follow. Claire pushed the door open with trembling hands, bracing for the worst. But the worst was not blood or bandages. It was Eli, sitting cross-legged on the couch, eating cereal straight from the box, his legs kicking happily in the air. The TV glowed with Saturday morning cartoons. He looked up when they entered, eyes bright and uninjured. Aunt Claire, he chirped, waving the cereal box. Mommy said you were coming back from your vacation to take care of me. The words hit Claire harder than any truth she'd ever heard. There was no accident, no brain trauma, no surgery, nothing. Sierra had invented a medical emergency to drag her home, to destroy her honeymoon on purpose. Claire's heart cracked in a way she couldn't immediately process. Caleb steadied her by the arm, whispering, "This is insane. She lied about her own kid." But before Claire could respond, her phone buzzed. A call from Sierra. Claire answered with shaking hands. What came through the speaker wasn't despair. It was pounding nightclub bass, the clatter of slot machines, and Sierra's unmistakable laughter. "Hey sis," Sierra shouted over the music. "Just wanted to see if you made it back yet." Claire could barely breathe. "Where are you?" "Oh, I'm in Vegas, baby," Sierra yelled. "Had to clear my head. And guess what? I'm up $500. Maybe I should fake emergencies more often." Claire felt the room tilt. "So, Eli isn't hurt?" Sierra snorted. "Oh, please. He's fine. Kids are resilient. I just needed you home. You weren't answering your phone for days, and honestly, must be nice having money to burn on stupid trips." Caleb leaned forward, jaw clenched as he listened on speaker. Sierra continued, voice dripping with jealousy and mockery. "You know, Claire, not everyone can afford to blow $8,000 just to drink on a beach. Some of us actually have struggles. But whatever. You're back now. My problem is solved." Then she laughed, a loud, cruel laugh that echoed through the call before she hung up. The humiliation was complete. It wasn't private. It wasn't subtle. It was Sierra declaring to the universe that Claire's kindness made her an easy target. Claire and Caleb stayed with Eli that night, partly out of love, partly because they feared what would happen if they didn't. The next morning, Claire filed a report with Child Protective Services. She explained everything: the neglect, the lies, the fabricated injuries, the abandonment. She handed over screenshots, phone logs, dates, addresses. She told them Sierra had left her 4-year-old alone for 3 days while she gambled in another state. The social worker listened politely, typing slowly, nodding at the right moments. But every answer she gave was the same. "We'll follow standard procedure. We can't intervene without a full investigation. We need to verify each detail. These cases take time." Time. A word that felt like a knife. Claire wanted to scream. A child doesn't have time. But she kept her composure. She did everything right. But doing everything right didn't prepare her for what happened next. 3 days later, a car screeched to a stop outside Claire's building. Sierra climbed out, sunglasses on, hair in a messy bun, fury radiating off her like heat. She marched up the walkway and began pounding on the door. "Open this damn door, Claire. I know he's in there." Neighbors peeked through blinds, stepped onto porches, paused in the halls. They watched Sierra hurl accusations like grenades. You kidnapped my child. You're obsessed with me. You're trying to be his mom because you can't have kids of your own. You're sick, Claire. You're sick. Claire stepped onto the porch, hands raised in calm surrender. Sierra, stop. You left him alone. You lied about a medical emergency. You flew to Vegas. Oh, shut up. Sierra spat. Everyone knows you're jealous of my life. Her voice rose until the whole street could hear. It was a spectacle, Sierra performing her rage like a show, and Claire standing there as the unwilling star of a public humiliation. Someone must have called the police, because within minutes, 2 patrol cars pulled up. The officers separated the women, questioned them both. Then one officer knelt beside Eli, who stood half-hidden behind Claire's leg. Buddy, who do you want to go home with right now? He asked gently. Eli didn't hesitate. He pointed at Claire. I want to stay with Aunt Claire. Mommy left me. Sierra froze. Her face changed, rage turning to something darker, more desperate. Her voice dropped into pure gaslighting venom. Sweetie, don't say that. You're confused. Your aunt is filling your head with lies. Come here. Come to Mommy. Eli flinched and shook his head, and that was the match that lit the explosion. Sierra lunged forward, screaming. It took both officers to pull her back. Aunt Claire is manipulating him, she shrieked. She's trying to steal my son. She's crazy. The officers exchanged a silent look, one that told Claire they had seen this pattern before. But even their sympathy couldn't stop what came next. For 72 hours, the chaos simmered. Then Sierra returned with a weapon Claire wasn't prepared for. A lawyer. Not just any lawyer. Derek Brooks, Sierra's half-brother from her father's second marriage, a slick-talking attorney with a reputation for twisting narratives until they snapped into whatever shape benefited his clients. He strutted into the courthouse with a smirk and a briefcase full of half-truths. Sierra brought emotion. Derek brought strategy. Together, they were a toxic duo, chaos paired with calculation. Claire and Caleb walked into the courtroom hopeful. They had evidence, timelines, screenshots, even the CPS report number. But evidence doesn't always win against theatrics. Derek cornered Claire with a rehearsed smile. Ms. Mitchell, your history of depression, when was your last episode? Claire stiffened. 5 years ago. I completed treatment. I've been stable since. But he didn't stop there. He produced a statement from a friend of Sierra's claiming Claire had once given Eli a sip of beer at a barbecue. A complete fabrication. He painted Claire not as a protective aunt, but as an unstable, jealous woman with a savior complex. And Sierra cried on cue. Tears. Trembling lip. Shaking hands. The classic performance of a frightened single mother. When the judge announced the temporary ruling, Claire felt the world collapse inward. Sierra would regain temporary custody until the investigation was completed. Eli clung to Claire, sobbing into her shoulder. Aunt Claire, don't let them take me. Please don't let Mommy take me. Claire held him tightly, tears burning down her face as a social worker gently pried him from her arms. She lost her voice. She lost her dignity. She lost Eli. Not because she was wrong, but because Sierra was louder. The courtroom doors closed behind him, and Claire stood frozen in the hallway, emptied and humiliated in a way she had never known. And in that hollow silence, one truth crystallized in Claire's mind. Silence was the one weapon Sierra couldn't twist or manipulate. Not this time. Not ever again. Claire wasn't done. She was just getting started. The courthouse hallway had drained Claire of everything. Her tears, her strength, her belief that doing the right thing would protect the innocent. Losing Eli that day felt like losing a piece of herself. But grief has a strange habit of sharpening into resolve. And in the days that followed, Claire learned that silence was not surrender. It was preparation. Because Sierra's victory was temporary. And the universe has a way of exposing the truth, especially when it's violent. It was nearly midnight when Claire heard the frantic knocking. Sharp, desperate, repeated. Caleb opened the door first and froze. Standing on the porch was Eli, barefoot, shivering, eyes swollen from crying. And on his cheek, a dark bruise bloomed like a cruel fingerprint. He whispered, Aunt Claire, can I stay? Claire dropped to her knees, pulling him into her arms. Eli, sweetheart, what happened? Who did this to you? He hesitated, trembling. Mommy's new boyfriend got mad. I spilled juice. He hit me. I ran out the back door. I didn't know where else to go. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a gray area. It was abuse, visible, undeniable, and documented by the small body shaking in Claire's arms. Claire's hands moved on instinct. She grabbed her phone. Caleb, call 911. There was no yelling, no panic, no emotional outburst. Claire operated with an icy calm she didn't know she possessed. Within minutes, officers arrived. They photographed the bruise, took statements, and recommended immediate medical evaluation. Claire and Caleb drove Eli to the ER, where a doctor examined him and documented everything. Injuries, emotional distress, his account of what happened. Every word, every bruise, every detail became evidence. This time, the truth wasn't something Sierra could argue with. It was written on her son's skin. The next afternoon, Sierra and her boyfriend, Logan, arrived at Claire's doorstep like a storm, shouting, accusing, and pounding on the door until neighbors peeked out again. Claire didn't respond. She didn't argue. She didn't give them a single word. She simply dialed the police and stepped back. When the officers arrived, Sierra shrieked. She stole my son. She poisoned him against me. But the restraining order, filed after Eli's midnight escape, made everything simple. Logan had violated it by stepping onto Claire's property. Sierra had violated it by bringing him. The officers didn't hesitate. They handcuffed Logan first, ignoring Sierra's demands. Then, when Sierra lunged toward Claire, they handcuffed her too. As the police cars pulled away, Claire stood still, arms folded, letting the silence speak for her. This was no longer emotional warfare. It was legal. 2 days later, Claire met with a new attorney, Miles Hargrove, a young but sharp family lawyer who had followed Sierra's public meltdown on record. Miles sat across from Claire, reviewing the stack of evidence she brought. He tapped his pen thoughtfully. Claire, he said, your biggest mistake so far was trying to explain yourself. Sierra's chaos thrives on arguments and reactions. She can twist anything you say. Claire lowered her eyes. So what do I do now? Miles leaned back. You stop playing her game. No yelling. No defending. No emotional responses. You let the evidence speak for you. It always will. He slid a notepad toward her. From now on, we collect everything. Photos, videos, audio, hospital records, CPS reports, timestamps, messages. Nothing is too small. We build a wall of truth so high that no judge can ignore it. For the first time in weeks, Claire felt something like strength return to her chest. This wasn't fear. It was strategy. Miles had one more recommendation. I want you to hire a private investigator. Someone who can look into Sierra's finances and Logan's history. People who lie usually leave a trail. Claire agreed. And the trail was worse than she imagined. The investigator discovered that Sierra had been collecting supplemental disability benefits for Eli by falsely claiming he had autism, a diagnosis no medical professional had ever made. Sierra pocketed the money. She also discovered that Logan had a criminal record involving staged accidents and insurance fraud. He had once been caught keying a car to provoke an insurance payout. Sierra and Logan weren't just irresponsible. They were committing financial crimes. Crimes with consequences far beyond custody. One night, Claire woke up to the quiet buzz of her phone. Her security system had detected movement. She opened the app and froze. Logan was standing on her driveway at 2:13 a.m., peering through windows, circling Caleb's car, checking doorknobs. He wasn't just stalking. He was hunting for leverage. Claire forwarded the footage to Miles immediately. His response came minutes later. This is gold. This alone could turn the entire custody case. Sierra, spiteful and unraveling, escalated her tactics. She called Claire's workplace, claiming Claire was mentally unstable and unfit to work with financial accounts. HR placed Claire under temporary review. Claire found a handwritten note on Caleb's windshield. Back off before something happens. No signature, but the handwriting was painfully familiar. During supervised visits, Sierra whispered to Eli, she's trying to replace me. She wants to steal you. Don't trust her. Every act was cruel, petty, manipulative. But Claire did exactly what Miles told her. She stayed silent. She recorded everything. She documented every incident with time, date, and witness. There were no screaming matches. No emotional confrontations. No more energy wasted on someone who thrived on chaos. Claire transformed into something Sierra had never expected. Cold. Rational. Strategic. A woman who no longer reacted, but calculated. Miles assembled everything into a case file thicker than a textbook. Hospital reports, photos of Eli's injuries, police arrest records, security footage of Logan at 2 a.m. CPS documentation, financial fraud evidence, screenshots of Sierra's threats, testimony from neighbors, records of workplace harassment. It wasn't just evidence. It was a roadmap of Sierra's self-destruction. And Claire hadn't laid a single trap. Sierra had built it all herself. Claire simply collected the pieces. By the time the next court date approached, Sierra walked into the legal battlefield believing she was invincible. But she had no idea she had already lost. Because every lie she told, every threat she made, every reckless act she committed had dug the hole deeper. And Claire was finally ready to let her fall into it. When the courtroom doors opened again, Sierra had no idea she was about to face the consequences she'd spent years running from. By the time the second court date approached, the energy between Claire and Sierra had shifted completely. Sierra walked into the legal arena the way she always did. Loud, confident, certain she could bluff her way through anything. But Claire entered differently. Silent, steady, prepared. She didn't need to raise her voice or defend her reputation. She had the one thing Sierra never possessed. The truth, collected meticulously, documented thoroughly, and ready to stand on its own. And this time, the courtroom would finally see all of it. The courtroom was fuller than usual. Attorneys, social workers, CPS representatives, even a few neighbors who had been subpoenaed. Grant, Sierra's attorney, arrived wearing the same smug expression he had worn in the first hearing. But the moment he saw the stack of folders Miles carried in, his confidence flickered. The judge began by reviewing the new evidence. The atmosphere thickened as each witness took the stand. First was the EMT who had examined Eli the night he fled to Claire's house. He described the bruises, the fear, the way Eli flinched when he heard Logan's name. Then the ER doctor confirmed the injury report. The bruise pattern is consistent with a strike from an adult hand. CPS provided logs of every complaint ever filed, including the abandoned child report Claire had made. Their representative said plainly, "We believe Eli's environment at his mother's home is unsafe at this time." The private investigator presented photos of Sierra's fake disability claims, paperwork showing how she siphoned government funds by falsely listing Eli as autistic. When the judge asked her to clarify Sierra's intent, the investigator responded with icy professionalism. She knowingly filed fraudulent documentation for financial gain. Then came the security footage. Logan creeping around Claire's yard at 2:13 a.m., trying car doors, looking into windows. The judge watched the video twice. Next were the threatening notes, the call logs, the workplace harassment file Claire's HR department had documented after Sierra tried to jeopardize her job. Finally, Miles placed the psychological evaluation on the judge's bench. The report was simple but devastating. Eli feels safe with Aunt Claire. The judge said nothing for a long moment. Even Grant's confidence drained as he flipped through the pages, realizing every argument he had planned was already dead. He tried anyway. That was his job. Grant rose, tugged his jacket straight, and began his last act. "Your Honor, we believe Ms. Mitchell is exaggerating. She has a long-standing emotional obsession with her nephew." Miles stood immediately. "Objection. Baseless and inflammatory." "Sustained," the judge said. Grant tried again. "Ms. Mitchell has previously struggled with mental health." Miles stepped forward. "And she sought treatment, recovered, and has had no issues for 5 years. Meanwhile, my client wasn't the one arrested last week." Sierra hissed under her breath. "He can't talk to me like that." Grant shot her a sharp look, but it was too late. The judge had already noticed. Grant shifted strategies. "Your Honor, we also have a witness who claims Ms. Mitchell once." Miles cut in, voice calm but lethal. "The witness we subpoenaed this morning? The one who admitted she was paid by Sierra to make that statement?" The courtroom fell into a heavy silence. Grant's face flushed. Sierra shot to her feet. "I didn't pay anyone. He's lying. They're all lying." The judge banged the gavel. "Ms. Brooks, sit down, or I will have you removed." It was the first time Sierra was publicly shut down. Her rage collapsed into a shaking, furious silence. Grant sank into his seat, defeated. He had nothing left. Evidence had crushed every lie before it even had a chance to breathe. When it was time for Eli to enter the courtroom, he clung to the social worker's hand. His eyes scanned the room, anxious, until they found Claire. He rushed toward her, stopping only when the bailiff gently reminded him he had to wait for permission. "Your Honor," the social worker said softly, "Eli has requested to sit next to his Aunt Claire while he answers questions." The judge considered it, then nodded. "He may." Sierra inhaled sharply, outraged. "Why does she get to, Ms. Brooks?" the judge warned again. "Do not interrupt." Eli slid into the seat beside Claire, tiny fingers gripping her hand like a lifeline. The judge asked, "Eli, where do you feel the safest?" He didn't hesitate. "With Aunt Claire." "And why is that?" the judge continued. "Because she listens. And she doesn't yell. And she doesn't let anyone hurt me." Sierra's face twisted with rage, tears brimming, not from remorse, but from humiliation. When the judge finally delivered the ruling, the courtroom held its breath. Given the overwhelming evidence presented, medical records, police reports, documented harassment, financial fraud, and the psychological evaluation, we award temporary custody of Eli to Claire and her husband, Caleb Mitchell. Sierra let out a strangled sound, half scream, half sob. The judge continued, voice unwavering. "Supervised visitation will be granted to Ms. Brooks for 1 hour per week, at the CPS facility only. Mr. Logan Carter is prohibited from any contact with the minor, permanently." Grant tried to interject, but the judge raised a hand. In addition, the matter of fraudulent disability collection is being referred to the district attorney's office for criminal review. Sierra's knees nearly buckled. With a final, decisive strike of the gavel, the ruling became reality. Eli ran into Claire's arms, burying his face into her shoulder. Caleb wrapped them both in an embrace. For the first time since the nightmare began, Claire felt like she could breathe, not because she won, but because Eli was finally safe. As the courtroom emptied, Sierra lunged forward, screaming, "You destroyed my life, Claire. You took everything from me. My son, my money, my freedom. You ruined me." Claire turned slowly, steady and calm. Her voice was soft, but it carried through the room with chilling clarity. "No, Sierra, I didn't destroy anything." A beat of silence. "I just stopped cleaning up your mess." Sierra froze. The words hit harder than any argument. Because they were true. Claire didn't have to ruin Sierra. Sierra had done it herself. Months passed. Eli began to sleep through the night again. The nightmares faded. The bruises healed. His laughter grew louder, brighter. He made friends at school, built Legos with Caleb, and learned, slowly but surely, that life could be gentle. Claire and Caleb created a home where he felt protected, where he no longer braced for yelling or chaos. And Claire learned something too. Not every family member deserves unconditional sacrifice. Some people use your loyalty as a weapon. She didn't regret saving Eli, but she finally understood that saving someone doesn't mean sacrificing yourself to them. In the final scenes of their story, Claire often found herself sitting on the porch, Eli curled beside her, the evening sun warm on their faces. Peace, simple, honest peace, had become their new normal. In the quiet that followed, one question lingered. What would you do when the person you trust most becomes the first one to betray you?